The police are forming a special unit to enforce the planned national security law. Police arrest a family of 3 after seizing firearms and ammunition from a village house in Howe.
Welcome to TVB News. The police will form a new unit dedicated to enforcing the national security legislation set to be in place in Hong Kong.
But critics fear authorities are over-interpreting the central government's decision. Speculations have been running wild as to who will be enforcing the new law and what role the national agency mentioned by Beijing officials will play when it's set up in Hong Kong. The Security Bureau noted that a new unit with intelligence gathering, investigation and training capabilities will be ready to function on the day this law takes effect. In an exclusive interview with SCMP, Secretary for Security John Lee also revealed that this special unit will be directly under the Commissioner of Police Chris Tang's command. The team will discuss how to apply the law to actual situations and to gather evidence on unlawful acts as described in the law. Lee added he's looking into introducing staff from 5 other disciplinary forces in town to the unit. Still, he declined to comment on how the police will work with the mainland's national security forces in the future. Pan-Democrats fear that the authorities are overreacting when details of the national security law are still unavailable.
I'm terribly worried that that's going to further damage Hong Kong's reputation as an international finance center. Really, I mean, all these the supposed cloak and daggers kind of talk, it makes Hong Kong look and sound more like a police state.
Former Security Chief Regina Ip, however, thinks is reasonable.
Intelligence collection and analysis definitely is a shortcoming of the existing police force because of the disbandment of the special branch before 1997. The Hong Kong government has the Governor's Security Committee, which embraces representatives not only from the police force, but also so-called colony POMIL, the military intelligence side of the British government.
She added it's time the police force worked towards forming a stronger and more effective security apparatus.
Family of 3 have been arrested after a gun and hundreds of rounds of ammunition were seized from a village house in Hongshui.
Meanwhile, police expressed alarm about some recent online posts. Deng Yaonian has the story.
A handgun, 390 bullets, and more gun parts were seized from a village house in Yuen Long. Police raided the unit in Hongshui in an intelligence-led operation Tuesday morning. A 38-year-old man and his parents were arrested. While the couple have been granted bail, their son remains in custody for allegedly possessing a handgun and ammunition. Police suspect the weapons were purchased online and delivered to Hong Kong. Superintendent Raymond Cho of the Narcotics Bureau said, in previous cases, guns bought from overseas websites are usually dismantled and mailed in separate packages to avoid detection. He says police will strengthen cooperation with local logistics and overseas law enforcement agencies to stem such activities. The origin of the weapons and their intended use are under further investigation. Police are also alarmed at recent online posts. Someone made claims on social media to attack police with real guns and bullets, said Cho, adding they will closely monitor such domestic terrorism-like trends and spare no effort in cracking down on such activity. Cho also noted a recent rise in gun and ammunition possession cases in Hong Kong, especially involving young people. He worries the months-long social unrest in the city might have radicalized some people, encouraging them to use guns and rim bombs to achieve their goals.
The police warned the possession of firearms is a serious crime and could lead to up to 14 years imprisonment. Deng Yaonian, TVB News.
Police are reminding the public that congregations during a religious activity are only exempted from the group gathering ban if they are held at venues regularly used for worship purposes. The warning came after the force was alerted to calls for an assembly on Hong Kong Island this Friday in the name of religion. Police vowed to deploy officers that day if any such gathering is held. Police reminded the public that participation in unauthorized gatherings is an offense punishable by up to 5 years behind bars.
12 protesters accused of storming the Legislative Council on July 1st last year now face charges of more serious offences. This as the prosecution filed new riot charges. Activists affected include rally organizer Ventus Lau, actor Gregory Wong, and ex-president of the Hong Kong University Students' Union, Althea Soon. That's on top of earlier trespassing charges, alleging they illegally entered the LegCo chamber. That means the maximum penalty they face has been raised from 3 months to 10 years imprisonment. The defendants were granted bail. The case will be heard again on August 3rd at the District Court. As the Black Lives Matter movement spreads across the world, another statue of a slave trader has been pulled down in Britain.
Well, meanwhile, thousands protested at Oxford University demanding another colonial statue be removed. Leslie Tang has more.
The statue of 18th century slave trader Robert Milligan was pulled down outside a London museum in front of a cheering crowd. But the removal was unlike the chaotic scenes over the weekend when anti-racism protesters toppled another statue of a slave trader and tossed it into a river in Bristol. This time, the decision to take down the statue was given the green light by the owners of the land.
It was an insult to the people of colour, black people. And so today, finally, to find that this statue has been pulled down is symbolic, it's a victory, and for the ancestors and the people whose lives have been affected by slavery, this is a victory today.
As the Black Lives Matter movement gains momentum, London's mayor announced more statues of imperialist figures could be removed from Britain's streets. Over at Oxford University, thousands of protesters came out in force to demand Oriel College pull down a stone image of Victorian Cecil Rhodes.
It represents racism, and we don't want to be in a racist society anymore, so it needs to be taken down.
Monuments glorifying imperialists have come into sharp focus following demonstrations sparked by the death of George Floyd in the U.S. He died in police custody after an officer knelt on his neck. Protesters also knelt on one knee for a moment of silence in what's become a global symbol of solidarity for Floyd. Leslie Tang, TVB News.
In Washington, a newly released Senate report says for nearly 2 decades, the U.S. government failed to properly oversee Chinese telecommunications companies operating in America. The report from the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations faulted the Federal Communications Commission and officials from the Justice, Homeland Security, and Defense Departments in their oversight of China Telecom, China Unicom, and Pacific Networks. It said they did little to counter possible national security threats from China. The report urged the FCC to quickly decide whether to revoke the 3 carriers' authorizations. In April, the FCC issued show cause orders to the 3 state-owned telecoms companies to explain why their authorizations to operate in the U.S. should not be revoked. All 3 carriers urged the FCC not to do that.
The Philippines completed construction of a beach ramp on a disputed island in the South China Sea, a move that will likely infuriate Beijing. Top military officials attended a ribbon-cutting ceremony on the island, internationally known as Thitu. Philippine Navy and cargo ships will now be able to dock and deliver large equipment and supplies on the island. Military barracks, homes, and a school are also planned. The project comes as the Philippines extended a regional defense pact with the United States. The island, which Filipinos call Pag-asa or Hope, lies near one of China's man-made islands. The South China Sea could potentially have rich reserves of oil and gas. Still to come on tonight's news. An HKU study suggests as many as some 2 million people in Hubei province could have been exposed to the new coronavirus. Former Home Affairs Secretary Patrick Howe now back in Hong Kong after getting out of prison in America. And in the UK, Prince Philip celebrates his 99th birthday with little public fanfare.
Welcome back to TVB News. Today, the city reported no new COVID-19 infections, and the tally has remained at 1,108 cases.
With local cases largely under control, public hospitals are now relaxing visitor restrictions. Starting next Wednesday, family members will be allowed to visit chronically ill patients at 16 non-emergency hospitals and rehab wards. But visits for each patient are limited to once per week, with the duration for each visit capped at 1 hour. New findings at the University of Hong Kong estimate more than 2 million people in Hubei province on the mainland could have been infected with COVID-19. That suggests official figures underestimated the prevalence of the virus. Researchers also warn future outbreaks are inevitable because many people lack antibodies to the virus. Pinky Wong has more.
Researchers conducted an antibody prevalence study. Close to 2,000 serum samples were collected from Hong Kong residents between April 2018 and February 2020. They compared the antibody positive rate of Hong Kongers before and after the pandemic had begun. The study found none of the samples collected tested positive with the virus antibody. That means less than 0.05% of the city's residents have pathogens. The team also looked at the prevalence of antibodies from 452 asymptomatic Hong Kong residents evacuated from Hubei province. Only 17 of those, so 3.8%, were found to have COVID-19 antibodies.
Only very, very few people in Hong Kong or returners from Wuhan had antibodies. So what that means is that most people are not immune to COVID, and therefore if the virus is circulating in our community, there's a possibility of an outbreak.
With that finding, experts estimate around 2.2 million people of the 59 million that live in Hubei could have been infected. As of March 31st, Chinese authorities reported around 68,000 laboratory-confirmed symptomatic patients in Hubei. Local experts said 97% of infections in the province might have gone undiagnosed during that stage of the epidemic. So how can Hong Kong prevent a second wave of the outbreak?
We should have at least 7,000 tests per day so that the chance of picking up asymptomatic patients is much better.
Pinky Wong, TVB News.
A first meeting between RTHK's review panel and the city's director of broadcasting took place this morning over the public broadcaster's editorial principles and program quality. Moving forward, RTHK will be producing dedicated shows on topics such as the controversial national security law for Hong Kong. Kainachi reports.
With greater power comes greater responsibility. For RTHK, this includes its unshirkable task to cultivate senses of civic and national identities among citizens.
Very simple answer, because we are a public broadcaster. It's said clearly in our mission and purposes that our job is to allow to produce programs to let the citizens understand one country, two systems and actual implementation.
That's in addition to a series of dedicated programs RTHK will produce to explain to the public 2 new laws on national security and national anthem.
I won't use the word promote, I will use the word embrace. We will embrace the law because Hong Kong is renowned for our legal system.
RTHK's lofty goals follow a panel review this morning after 2 of its shows received warnings from the Communications Authority. Emerging from a 1.5-hour meeting with the Director of Broadcasting, the Public Broadcaster's Board of Advisors also vowed to enhance staff understanding of its editorial charter and the One China principle. It asserted its respect for editorial independence, but will be issuing advice to production teams.
While a positive and responsible presentation of issues is expected of show producers, Eugene Chan also welcomes the inclusion of differing views and controversial topics in programs to offer comprehensive coverage.
According to RTHK, a 20-episode program on national security legislation for the SAR is expected to be released at the end of the month. Each segment will be 5-minute long, scrutinizing the subject through multifaceted perspectives and comparisons with similar laws overseas. Kana Chu, TVB News.
Former Home Affairs Secretary Patrick Howe returned to Hong Kong this morning after serving his 3-year jail sentence in the United States. Howe landed at Hong Kong International Airport at around 7 a.m. He was then taken to Asia World Expo for a COVID-19 test. At around 4 p.m., Howe was seen leaving the test venue on board a private vehicle. The former official got out of prison on Monday and was repatriated to Hong Kong as his American visa was terminated. He was arrested in New York in late 2017 and was subsequently convicted of bribery and money laundering. The multi-million-dollar bribery plot involved top African leaders from Chad, Senegal, and Uganda. The case revolves around oil rights for a mainland-based oil conglomerate, CEFC China Energy, in Chad and Uganda.
Prince Philip, the husband of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, is celebrating his 99th birthday today. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there will be little fanfare to mark the occasion. Buckingham Palace released a new photograph of the royal couple to celebrate the prince's birthday. He plans to spend the day privately in Windsor Castle with the 94-year-old Queen. They have been staying there during the nation's lockdown. This means the rest of the royals will have to send their birthday wishes via video calls. That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.